Hello, everyone. As mentioned, we're starting the soft skills session, soft skills set of talks. I will be talking about developing your Scrum Masters, because Scrum Masters and product owners, Agile folk in general, because that might be a tricky part. I've seen it, done it a number of times, not always the best one. I'm Łukasz, I'm with STX Next, and at the company, among other responsibilities, one of them is mentoring so-called junior Scrum Masters, or people generally new to that role who don't have quite a lot of experience in that area and need some help to develop their skills further. So when working in mentoring sessions, agreements like that one, I've noticed quite a few things that are eventually some hot tips that eventually became what we call now a mentoring program, a simple framework that helps out organize such sessions much better. So it all starts pretty obviously. So you need to set up sessions set up mentoring pairs. Obviously, these are one-on-one, and these are between a more senior and a junior person, but that's pretty obvious. The tricky part here is to take it into consideration whether those people will actually get along well. That's important because mentoring builds on trust, and if we do not have trust in that relationship, we won't be able to work efficiently, because mentoring in that particular area of being a Scrum Master in a team or a product owner in a team requires you to share perhaps some of your failures, some things that simply don't work in your team. So you need to have trust between your Scrum Master, between your mentor and your mentee, for that to work efficiently. I'll get into that a little more later on in the talk. So once you have the pairs set up, what we do is a semi-formal kickoff meeting between those two people, and within that kickoff session, what we do, we talk about mutual expectations. These are expectations from the mentee and from the mentor, and those are targeted at both the program itself and ourselves. Expectations of the mentor towards the mentee, and the mentee's expectations towards the mentor. What we do next, once we know our expectations, we try to set up some wide goals for that mentoring agreement. So an example for a goal like that might be simply fluently working with powerful questions, or maybe getting to know multiple tools to work with your product backlog. These are things that are supposed to focus us on the wider target that we're attempting to achieve when meeting one-on-one later on. So on one hand, that's the third one is setting up rules. Setting up rules, these can be simple enough, such as a schedule. So when do we meet? How often do we meet? Most of the time, in my mentoring activities, these were 1-hour mentoring sessions every week. So some of you might say it's a lot, some of you might say it's not enough, but most of the time it seemed to work quite well. That amount of time was enough to bring up important subjects, to transfer enough knowledge, and on the other hand, it didn't really collide with your day-to-day activities within your teams. So the other kinds of rules that we were setting up there were things like ask me anything. It was good to bring it up right at the beginning, so that both of the people were comfortable and knew what was going to happen next. The other type of rule that we often introduced was the Vegas rule. So whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. That meant we had agreed upon confidentiality between of what happened during our session. So both of us could be confident and comfortable with sharing our different, sometimes successful, sometimes unsuccessful things that happened to us in our projects. So on one hand, all that allowed us to to know what we can expect from the mentoring session, so we don't go into our separate ways. But most importantly, critically, that allowed us to get to know each other a little better and build that trust that I was already talking about. Because when we discussed all those things, we were feeling much more confident in our relationship. So once we had that out of the way, it was time to actually get to work and start covering some topics. And as you can see here, those mentoring sessions came in a lot of shapes and sizes. This could be like regular mini workshops or talks or like ask me anything sessions. This could be regular coaching sessions for the mentee. This could be mutual visits to one another's teams. So either I as a mentor was visiting a mentee's team and then providing feedback, or the mentee could come into to my team, observe how I work with the team, and provide feedback as well and learn from it as well. When working with set topics, it was also beneficial for us to have a restaurant menu of topics to cover. So we came up with a large list divided into sections like coaching skills, moderation skills, technical tool set, and so on. And each of these had a subtopic for the mentee to choose from when he was deciding upon a topic to cover. And the important thing here is that it was always the mentee who chose the topic to cover during one of our upcoming sessions. So it was never forced on him. It was always like in that pull principle. So and the other thing is we try to focus on current issues in the team. So those were actual things that happened during a mentee's work at his team. Because when we were discussing like abstract topics that didn't have any relation to what was going on in the mentee's team at that point, it didn't really carry that much value. Because, okay, so we learned something, but there was no way to easily transfer it to what was going in that team. So it's important to make sure that those things that you're covering during your sessions is actually relevant to what's happening in the team. On the other hand, that's maybe there's a grain of salt in it, because you should also keep focus, and you should always remember what your goal set in advance was. So do not forget what you're trying to achieve, how you want to develop that particular Scrum Master or product owner, because he might have a higher goal in his mind. And if you only stick to day-to-day issues that are in the team, you might lose that bigger picture from it. Finally, feedback. Well, not finally. Feedback. Obviously, we shared feedback. We are agile folks. We are used to giving feedback. Those were transferred on a regular basis. So or nearly every session ended up with a quick what went well, what went wrong session, especially if we kind of felt that it was a little boring, or maybe it lacked some of the value. But apart from that, at the very beginning of the program, we set a set date in about 2 or 3 months' time from the start to look back and reflect on the entire process that was behind us. That gave us the ability to reflect on the goal that we set at the very beginning, so we knew whether we were actually meeting the goal or not. And on the other hand, it gave us like valuable insight on what to improve in that process, because one of the things we came up with was like action points. So we're meeting up. Why don't we have action points from our mentoring sessions? And lastly, we could decide in that particular time slot whether it's worth it to continue that mentoring program or not. Maybe the relationship isn't going that very well, and maybe we should try to set up a different pair. Maybe the mentee has learned so much that he wants to be on his own for a while. And maybe we just want to change the goal a little and continue working with a different set of objectives. Finally, a few success factors that I noticed. So things that made that mentoring program work well, in my opinion. Like the first one and foremost, I would say, so that vibe and trust between the mentor and the mentee. If we didn't get along well, the program didn't work well as well. So that's key. That's why you need to have people who will get along to make this really work. Secondly, willingness on both sides. Obviously, if you're not committed to working in that mentoring agreement, you won't achieve a success. You need to have commitment to actually working in that for that program, because that means being pulled off from your regular duties and committing yourself to something different. Regularity is something that also helps you with finding time. Like Henrik said in the morning today, if you have it scheduled, you'll find time for it because you know it's important for you. And if you focus on your day-to-day job, your work within the team, you'll probably deprioritize your mentoring sessions and you'll come either unprepared or you'll miss the meeting at all. And that simply won't work. Diversity of sessions allows you to keep interest, because if you go into every session with a talk, even if it's a different topic, you'll get bored eventually, especially if you do it every week. Being prepared, right? I must admit, I've had a few sessions when the project I was working on really was bugging me a lot. I didn't have time to prepare to my mentoring session, and it went horribly awful. It was boring. There was no way that hour was spent efficiently. So it's better to spend some more time in the beginning to prepare to that session rather than come unprepared. If you're coming unprepared, just cancel it. And finally, one thing I already mentioned, action points. These were very good for focusing on following up on what we've learned. So if we were discussing, for example, story mapping sessions or how to lead an effective story mapping session, then the action point would be obviously to go into the team by the mentee and try it out on his own project so that he actually can put that knowledge into practice within his team. Some outcomes that we've learned. It took us about 3 months to gain a significant increase in skills. It seemed unrealistic at the very beginning that you can actually learn a lot within such a short time period, but it appeared that if you do it regularly, it's actually feasible. People feel supported, on the other hand, so you don't get left alone. When you're a new Scrum Master, you're perhaps new to the company, you don't know what to do. You may have a manager that will help you out, but you may not have one. If you get a mentor, you feel much more supported in what you do. You don't feel left alone. And some side things, a knowledge base is easily created. When we were working on particular mentoring topics, it appeared that a lot of knowledge was gathered in a single spot that can now be shared across the company just because we prepared it for a particular mentoring slot. And finally, perhaps most importantly in this matter, is that having that kind of structure that we knew that we're starting with the kickoff and having regular feedbacks and we know how to lead those sessions really helped us achieve those goals, because having that structure made it much simpler for us. Thank you, guys.